Let me fix my hair. Yes, 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 ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Now pass me my.
What's poppin'? Welcome to another episode of Life with Taiwo, the podcast. I'm your host, Taiwo Capadano. I'm super excited about this episode today. If you are new here, welcome, girl. Welcome to my podcast. I really appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate you being a part of my community. You are welcome. If you are returning, girl, you already know what to do. Pull up a chair, grab some apple cider, some wine, whatever it is that you do, grab it, and let's sit, let's talk, let's chat. All right, I can't start this episode off without thanking you guys for the outpour of love on my last podcast episode. You guys went in, and I am so grateful for just all the love you guys showed on that episode. If you haven't seen episode 6, 12 years in prison, a conversation with a former classmate, I urge you, I implore you to go and check that out. It was such a great watch. And I really appreciate you guys for showing me love, showing my guest love. And yeah, thank you guys so much for all of that. So, as you can see, the title of today's episode is called Breaking Generational Curses. Now, I am in a season of my life where I'm breaking a lot of generational curses. I am unlearning a lot of things that was passed down from my family, from my parents, from my parents' parents, and now that I am in my life, and this is my life, and I have my child and my husband, there's so many things that are stopping with me. So many things stops here. The train stops here. and that's just it. There's no negotiation about that. The train stops here. And I know a lot of people that are in that position as well, where they're unlearning a lot of things that they learned from their family. I'm going to be very honest about this topic because a lot of times I kind of hide how I truly feel because I don't want to share things about myself with people. But that's how you liberate others, is by sharing. So in this for this topic, I am gonna dive into it quite deeply. Um, so let's get started. So a lot of generational curses are passed down by way of relationships. So let's say that your mom was in an abusive relationship and maybe her mom was in an abusive relationship, and now you find yourself in an abusive relationship and it seems normal to you because that's what you've always seen. That's really what it is. It's normal because that's what you've always seen. But it's not normal at all. It's not normal to be in an abusive relationship. It's not normal for love to hurt. Love is not supposed to hurt you. Love is not supposed to call you names. Love is not supposed to beat you. Love is not supposed to mentally drain you. That is not what love is. And if you're in a relationship like that, that is not love. And a lot of times we put up with stuff because we've seen our parents go through that, whether our moms went through it or our grandmas, whatever. We see the fact that it's continued. So then we kind of carry the baton without realizing that we're carrying the baton. When you become a parent, you start to see a lot of things that were not okay, whether from your upbringing, from your childhood, or whatever. Um, so I remember my mom. So I'm going to go into a little story time. My mom was in a my mom's mom. I wouldn't say she was in an abusive relationship because I never got to meet her. But I do know that she was one of 8 wives. And to me, that's abuse enough. I'm going to be honest. That's abuse enough. One of 8 wives is wild. That's just my opinion. Argue with your mom. One of 8 wives is wild. But she was in a relationship where she, had to share her husband. My mom was in an abusive relationship with her husband, where he was mentally abusive, physically abusive, emotionally abusive, verbally abusive. In every way you can be abusive to someone, he was abusive. And she was a very strong woman, but he had a way of literally weakening her to her knees. Like, he was one of those people where, like, my dad would say stuff like, I don't want to physically kill you. So, and he knew that my mom had like high blood pressure or whatever at the time. So he would say, I don't want to physically kill you, so I'm going to stress you out until your body gives up on you. Like, he would say stuff like that. So he was abusive. He was very verbally abusive. Um, so yeah. So seeing that growing up, I always knew that I didn't want that to be my story. I didn't want to be with a person that said they loved me but treated me the opposite way. And I know growing up, my dad wanted me to marry someone that was Nigerian. He wanted me to marry someone that was like in the community, in the culture. Um, and to be quite frank, a lot of narcissistic fathers always want their children, their daughters, to marry men like them. That way, they can bond with the husbands. That's really a thing. Um, so he wanted me to marry someone that was like him. So growing up, I saw the way he treated my mom, and that really steered me away from dating. So I never really dated. I probably talked to maybe two or three guys in my whole entire life, and it probably lasted for like 2 weeks. Like, what's your favorite color? This, that, and the third, and that was it. Because I just didn't want to put myself in that position to get hurt because I kind of saw how my dad was. So I just never dated. I just kind of stayed to myself. I kept to my books. I was very driven when it came to school and when it came to working and making money. So I just kind of stayed in that lane. I wasn't sexually active. I was a virgin up until I met my husband, but I was a virgin for, my whole entire teenage, years and the beginning of my 20s, and half of my 20s. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is I didn't want anyone like my dad. I knew that that was a generational curse from a very early age that I had to break. I knew that that was something that I had to take the reins on and like, no, I'm not allowing this to continue because I've always respected my mom, even though she put up with a lot of things that he, would do to her. I respected her because I knew that she had nowhere else to go at the time and he was all she knew. So I knew that. And I still respected her because I knew that, she was trying to stay in the marriage for us. But I knew that I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be in a marriage, a loveless marriage. I didn't want to be in a marriage where um, it was our bed was cold because I knew her bedroom was cold. I knew that. I knew so many things about my mom's relationship at a young age that I should have never known. And this is because my dad would, broadcast these things to whoever he would hear him, regardless of whether or not we were like 8, 9, 10. He didn't care. He would just say things about their marriage to us, which was not okay. But anyway, from a young age, I knew that I had to be the one to break that generational curse for my bloodline and for the children that come through me. So I remember when I was dating, and I met my husband. I just knew when I was dating, not dating that way, but when I would like meet certain guys, they would always their toxic traits would always stick out to me more because I seen my dad in them. So I would be so quick to like stop. It's like I can't. Like, what's your favorite color? What I'm done. I'm good. You remind me too much of somebody. I can't do it. So from a very young age, I would be like, nah, I'm good. Like when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, I'm good. I'm straight. I don't really want to continue with this, talking stage, situationship, whatever this is. So then I remember when I met my husband, and obviously my husband is not Yoruba, he's not Nigerian, my husband is Italian. And this is one thing I recommend to all the women out there, even men. Leave your leave your option open. Like, don't close off your option. Like, oh, I can only date someone that's Nigerian. I can only date someone that's black. I can only date someone that's white. I think that is the most foolish thing to do because you have no idea who God put on this earth for you to be with. You have no clue who God put on this earth for you to be with. So when you close yourself off to what could potentially be the happiest relationship that you could possibly be in, you put yourself in a position to be hurt. You really do. And that's something I remember, that I told myself that I would never limit myself to just one race or to one, you know what I mean? I just always told myself that. So when I met him and when we started talking and we started to build a relationship together, I knew he was the one because he had all the qualities that my dad didn't. He was a provider, he was a leader, He was generous. He was kind. He was funny. He gave me peace. There was so many things. I don't even want to say so many things. It was all the things that my dad was not, which is why my dad actually did not like him because he was threatened because of the good man that my husband is. Um, so that's a story for another day. But my dad didn't like him for that reason. But I liked him for that reason because he was everything my dad wasn't. And when I met my husband, I knew this is the generational curse breaker. He is the generational curse breaker. This is the lane I should go. It was unconventional. It wasn't something that I saw for myself. It wasn't something that, I was championed to go, in the route of. Um, which is why I went in the route of that, because I knew that that was what God had for me. That was what God wanted for me because I remained open minded. And I remember when I talked to God about him, because anyone that I ever like had a talking stage with, I would always talk to God about them. Like, God, is this the person you sent for me? If it's not, remove them. And believe it or not, God would always remove anyone I told him to remove from my life. They would be gone. They would be gone, gone. Like, no joke, no lie. They would be gone. So um I prayed about him, and God was like, "No, that's him. It's him. He's the one." And you guys, when I tell you how grateful I am that I said yes to him, when I tell you how grateful I am that I allowed him to pursue me, and not only did I allow him to pursue me, I accepted his pursuit. When I tell you how grateful I am for that, because I could have never imagined the life that I live now, the peace that I have, the way that I feel in my marriage, the way I feel with my husband, I could never quantify it. I could never quantify it. This was something that I grew up not seeing. I grew up not seeing good communication. I grew up not seeing peace within the family. I grew up not seeing a man that led. I grew up seeing a man that stressed his wife out. I grew up seeing a man that would throw water on his wife while she was sleeping in the bed just because he felt like it. I grew up seeing toxic stuff. So then to be in a marriage with someone that is the opposite of that, to be in a marriage with someone that tells me, you don't have to work. You can just do what you are passionate about. I just want you to chill. I just want you to be good. What do you need? Do you need anything? What can I help you with? To be in a marriage like that, sometimes it blows my mind because I didn't grow up seeing that type of love. I didn't grow up seeing that type of sacrifice. I grew up seeing a man that was the leader of his family only take from everyone around him, only drain everyone around him. So, in that regard, the generational curse that has always followed my family, my dad, my mom, it's broken with me. It ends with me. My daughter, I see how she's one. She's 15 months, and I see how she looks at me and her dad when we're kissing and when we're hugging and when we're playing around. I see how she looks at us, and she's so happy, and she's just always just, you know what I mean. And I'm just so filled with gratitude. I'm so filled with gratitude because I know that my daughter will never experience seeing her mom unhappy. I know my daughter will never experience seeing her mom be in an abusive relationship, and that makes me feel so good. It makes my heart so full. So that is number one. The second is breaking generational curse and toxic friendships. Okay, so I'm going to just read from my notes. So, watching my mom navigating her place in her friend group, seeing her betrayed because she ignored the signs, and how that's something I've personally experienced, and how communing with God saved me. Um, and yeah, so let's dive deeper into that. So I remember growing up, my mom is a very kind person. She's a sweet woman. I love her so much. She's so incredible. She's so amazing, and she's a great friend. And unfortunately, my mom has been in relationships and friendships that did not serve her, where she was the one pouring out more than she was getting, and where she was pretty much pouring from an empty cup, and she never got anything back in return but betrayal. Like, her friends would always betray her. It was the weirdest thing to see how people would pretend to be cool and, demure, and later on you find out that they're not good people, or they didn't have, her best intentions at heart, and it would always, at first it doesn't anymore because she don't even mess with nobody no more, and I can't blame her. But before, it used to really hurt her because she would wonder like why this was happening to her when she just was really a good person with great intentions. So I remember when I was in the friendship pool and I'm exploring friendships and stuff like that. And at first, the friendship seemed safe, it seemed great, it seemed amazing. But then out of nowhere, they would betray me in some weird way. And all the signs would be there, of course, but I would always ignore it because I would always try to give them the benefit of the doubt. So then I remember talking to God about that, and then He told me that this is a generational curse that you're gonna have to break, is breaking the generational curse when it comes to friendship. And the only way to do that is to commune with God. Because while God, yes, God has called us to have community, but He first wants us to have a relationship with Him. And when you have a relationship with God, it's almost like having someone that puts you on game. You know what I mean? Like with everything. Imagine, God telling you, oh, don't go to that store, go to this store instead, or don't wear this instead, and those tips that He's giving you saves you as you go out about your day. Like let's say He told you not to go to the store, but go to the store instead, and then you go to the store instead, and then you find out that there was like a robbery at the other store. You know what I mean? That's the type of relationship God wants to have with us, where He puts us on game, where He tells us and we listen. He says, my sheep, they know my voice. He wants us to be so close that you know that it's God's voice. So yes, He wants us to have community, He wants us to have friendship, but He wants us to have relationship with Him first. When you have a relationship with God first, everything else that follows will be blessed. Because if a certain person comes in your life that is not supposed to be in your life, God is going to let you know that's not your friend. That's not who you're supposed to be with. God will show you signs. And then, of course, you tell God, oh, if this person is not for me, take them out of my life. He will listen. That is probably one of the most powerful prayers there are, there is. That is probably one of the most powerful prayers there is. When you ask God to remove someone from your life, listen, He wastes no time. They're gone the next day, the next week, the next month. They're gone. They're gone, never to be heard of again. Like He's that effective. He's that efficient when it comes to His kids, when it comes to His loyal ones, when it comes to His appointed ones. I didn't realize there was a generational curse within friendships, from my mom. I had no idea. So when I started to explore friendships and I started to see that it was kind of a common thing, I was like, oh no, like this is something that I have to go to God about. I have to pray about. So when I was praying to God about it, He was like, that was something your mom didn't do early on, was pray about her friendships, was seek me about her friendships. And that's something I want you to do. So then when I started doing that, when I tell you the way He's cleaned house, the way He has cleaned house, I don't even have to worry about anything. I bring the friendship to Him. If it's the friendship that He brought, He blesses it. If it's the friendship that He did not bring, He removes them. He removes them. He tells me, block this person, remove this person from your life. They don't care about you. They don't like you. He tells me that. So that's a generational curse, and it hurts, of course, because like you have this relationship with people, and you don't want to just kind of leave them high and dry, or and not even leave them high and dry. Even though someone is hurting you, you still want to hold on to them. Even though certain people like treat you a certain way, you still feel like you owe them something. You know what I'm saying? And God has called us to not to be people pleasers. And a lot of times we have people pleasers in our family. Our parents could be people pleasers. Shit, Nigerians in general, we are like conditioned to be people pleasers. So sometimes it's hard to listen to God when He's telling you to move away from something or to move away from somebody. And sometimes it's hard to even go to Him about somebody because you already know, like, this person is not good for me. I know this person is not good for me. And I know if I ask God to remove them, God is going to remove them. So, yeah, that's it. That's number two. Um, and I'm going to read from my notes here. It says, I said here, Yes, Jesus has called us to community, but first thing he's called us to is a relationship with him. And when we have a strong relationship with God, he'll usher our steps in every way. He'll tell us who's for us and who isn't, who's meant to walk with us and who's not. When we have a strong relationship with God, he will tell us everything we need to know. Example, like you ever have someone put you on game, someone who saw something that could bring trouble to your door and told you quickly to prevent harm from coming to you. That's how the Lord is. He doesn't talk for the sake of talking, but when he does, it's powerful. And he's only fluid with those who truly have a relationship with him. And in Matthew 7:7-8, it says, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds. And to him who knocks, it will be open." So God pretty much is saying, like, when you come to me, I got you. When you come to me, I got you. In the beginning of my mom's friendship, she didn't really go to God. She didn't really go to God about them. Or maybe I don't know. She probably did. And maybe I just don't know. She probably did go to God. Before she watched this and come for me. She probably did go to God. But something God has been telling me to do in order to break the generational curse within friendships, I need you to come to me first about everybody. I need you to come to me first because there's a light about you, there's an abundance about you, there's energy about you that certain people want to suck, certain people want to take. When you are anointed and when you know that you're anointed, other people see that gift too. Other people see that about you as well. And oftentimes they only come to your life to get a piece of that, to be around you, to so that could rub off on them too, in a way that's not beneficial to you. It's in a negative way. They're leeches. You know what I'm saying? There's some people that come in your life to leech off of the goodness of you, the energy of you, the prosperity that you have. You know what I mean? So God told me years ago, in order to break this generational curse, I need you to come to me about every single friendship, every single one. And when I tell you everybody I've gone to God about, as far as like friendships with me, listen, if they're for me, he blesses it. If they're not, do you see them around me? Do you see this? Do you see this girl around? No. And you're not gonna. Period. Yeah, he removes them. Bye. The third is generational curses within sibling relationships. So my mom had a sister. I'm gonna say had because she's no longer in my mom's life because my mom, she was put on game. Like God put her on game, and she heeded his warning. But anyway, she had a sister who, I'm not even gonna talk too much about that, to be honest, because I'm not even gonna give any light to anyone that doesn't need light on them. So I'm not gonna even talk about that. I'm not gonna talk about that. I'm gonna talk about what relates to me. I have a twin sister and I love her so much. And I'm not going to talk down on her. I'm not going to say anything bad about her. I thought I would speak about my experience with her, but to be honest, I don't want to bash her because I don't want anyone to judge her. Like, yes, she is the way she is and she's not in my life currently. And I don't know if she ever will be in my life, to be honest. I'm not sure if I'll ever invite her back in my life, but you know, time will tell. But me and my sister, there's a generational curse within that situation and that relationship where certain people with my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family, the siblings didn't get along, and either one sibling would be jealous of the other or whatever the case was. So I noticed that in my situation, and I noticed that my mom would put up with stuff in her with her siblings, and they would be hurting her, but she would still put up with things with them. And that's a generational curse that I believe God was calling me to break because there were things early on that I would put up with my sister that were really terrible, that was really toxic. But I thought because of the sake of her being my sister and for the sake of her having that title, I had to put up with that. And it was only bringing turmoil into my life. It was only bringing chaos into my life. So that was something that I had to pick up at the root. I prayed about it And God told me, I need you to step away from this. And when a lot of people hear about the fact that me and my sister are not, we don't talk and she's not in my life, people get really surprised by that. They're just like, what? What do you mean? Especially people in the Nigerian community, because they're like, what do you mean? You guys don't talk? That's your sister, blah, blah, blah. Because in our community, it's unheard of to have a twin or to even have a sibling that you don't talk to, because we've been conditioned to put up with toxic behavior, even if it's at the detriment of you. And that's something that I no longer wanted to continue. That could not continue anymore in my life. I didn't want someone to be in my life that secretly did not like me, secretly was jealous of me, secretly wanted to harm me, was physically, emotionally, mentally, and verbally abusive to me. Just because you're in my family, just because we have this title, does not mean that you're entitled to me. I give you grace to live your life and do what you need to do, but you can do it over there. You don't have to do it with me around. You don't, and I don't have to live my life with you in my life, with you around. So that was a generational curse that I had to break, because it was just it started to get really ridiculous, to the point where I was just like, why am I putting up with this? This is really terrible behavior. This is toxic. Why am I putting up with this? I know that God did not call me to put up with this. The Lord said, love your neighbor as yourself. She's really good to herself, so she's not loving me as she loves herself. So that's not a commandment that she's following. So I need to go ahead and skedoodle. I need to move and go about my business. So yeah, I had to really remove myself from that, and ever since I've been much happier. This is how you know that you've broken a generational curse, is when you remove yourself from that situation, when you unlearn that behavior, when you pluck that thing from the root. You're happier. You're happier. You feel lighter. You feel at peace. You feel good. That is when you know that you have broken a generational curse. Is you feel the results of it in your life. You feel lighter. You feel like a feather. You feel great. That is how you know that you've broken a generational curse. The fourth one, generational curse with laziness. So my father's dad was lazy. He didn't really do a lot for his family. He just kind of, did whatever. He kind of stuck with the status quo. Stick to the stuff you know. I'm just kidding. High School Musical. That was my ish. Okay. So my dad's dad was. I don't want to say that he was lazy, because God rest his soul, but he wasn't much of a provider. He kind of just, let life just pass him by. You know what I mean? He never really took his life just by the horns and just went for all the things he wanted to go for. He just kind of just did whatever. I noticed that transferred into my dad. My dad just kind of did whatever. He wasn't really as ambitious. Um, he kind of would just lay around, mosey around, watch his life pass by, watch his friends, accomplish different things, and he would just kind of not do anything. And I remember seeing that growing up, and of course, I never respected it, because I thought, as a man of your home, you you led, and you provide. But he wasn't much of that. He just kind of he was just really lazy. So now in my own personal life, right, I notice at times where I know I have to do something, but then I don't want to do it, or I know I have a goal I need to accomplish, but then I don't want to do it. And I started to realize, like, God started to show me that this is a generational curse that you have to break. The generational curse within laziness, the generational curse regarding laziness. You have to break that. That's something that followed your father's father, your father, and it's trying to seep into you. You have to break that. And I remember when God gave me that revelation, and I was like, oh my God, a couple years ago. That's why I go so hard. That's why I go so hard. I know the odds that are against me. I know. I know the things, and there are no odds against me. Let me not say that. God forbid. I know. I know what it is. I know what it is. I know what it is. I know what it is, and I'll be darned if I let my life pass me by and I don't do anything about it. No, no. That's not what's happening. Like, no, that's not happening. So I had to pray against the generational curse for laziness. And even with the things that I do, like I feel resistance. You know how long it took me to record this episode? You know how long it took me to record this episode? I was like, heck no. I don't care. I started setting up for this episode because I wanted to record in a different room in our home. And I started recording, I started like planning all of this like noon. It's 7:51. I was like, this is going out. This is being recorded right now. I don't care. My family just went out to eat and I'm like, I gotta finish. I have to finish. Like I'll meet up with y'all, but I have to finish because this is an assignment for me. This is something that I'm truly dedicated to. And I'm not. This the generational curse of laziness is gone. That's broken. It's broken. I've accomplished so much in my life that I never thought I would. I have accomplished so much in my life that my own father never accomplished. Like, no, no. And I feel like this is something that we don't really talk about. There's some of us, listen, our families, our parents, they did the best they could. They pushed through, they grinded, they came to this country, they did that. They did that. And then there's some parents who came here and were gossiping under a tree. Like I was watching this one movie called Alakada. It's a Nigerian movie, and she was pissed off because like her family was like poor and destitute. She was pissed, and she saw like all of her friends were like rich or whatever, and she was like, when my friends' parents were like getting to the bag, getting to the money, my parents were under a tree gossiping. Like, what was y'all doing? Do y'all have two heads?
Mo mọ̀ pé nígbà táwọn ẹgbẹ́ wọn tó ń make owó abẹ́ igi náà máa wà tó máa rojọ́ tó máa gbé bọ̀ wọn.
You know what I'm saying? I thought that was so funny. But like the spirit of laziness, I think, is a thing that a lot of people don't talk about, where you let your life just pass you by. You don't do what you're supposed to be doing. You don't push through the purpose that is within you. You let it just rot and expire. And it says in the Bible about using your young body to fulfill. And I gotta find it. I gotta find it. I want to quote this scripture perfectly. So in Ecclesiastes 12:1, it says, remember your creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. So this verse pretty much encourages young people to live purposely and faithfully while they have energy and strength to serve God and make an impact. And I believe that a lot of people sometimes use their youthful bodies to sleep and to do things that aren't really adding to them. And then before you know it, you see your friends who really developed the endurance. Oof, I have chills. 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 Wow. I have chills right now. Wow. Let me just go back. A lot of this never gets talked about. How sometimes, like, you might have seen your father or his father not really do as much, kind of slouch, do nothing. I remember in Mufasa, The Lion King. Um, please go watch that. That's actually a really good movie. It has a lot of lessons that I think, a lot of us can benefit from. But in that movie, the Scar's dad, so Taka's dad, because he got his name later on in the movie, but his name is Taka. His dad was really the king, and but he was a lazy king. He was so lazy, and whenever I remember when Mufasa, was adopted into their family, Taka's mom would be the one to kind of took him under her wing, and she was kind of teaching him stuff or whatever. And Taka's dad, who was the king, took Taka under his wing and was teaching him the ways of being a king. But all he would do was just sleep. He would just slouch around and he would just sleep. And Taka was like, oh, but you're supposed to teach me the ways of a king. And he said, this is what kings do. We do whatever we want. We just sleep, blah, blah, blah. So that's what he was teaching his son. So that was a generational curse that he was passing on to his son. And that is within a lot of our own families. That kind of goes kind of unnoticed. Where and there's some families now where the mom and the dad, they get into that bag. Okay, they're getting into the money, and the kids see that, and maybe they choose not to really do, follow that footstep, follow, and the kids see that and choose maybe not to follow those footsteps. But man, but then there's some families where the dad, the leader, is lazy, lazy, and I don't want to say a bum because that's a little harsh, but lazy. And then the kids see that and see that that's how it's meant to be. I'll be honest with you, there are times when you go out and about and you might see a family. I remember I saw this family. No, I remember one time. So a quick example of a generational curse of laziness being passed down. I remember there was a time I was going to my neighborhood Kroger, and there was this guy there, and he was there with his son. His son was probably like maybe like 6 or 7, and he was pandering. He was asking people for money and things like that. He had his truck parked, the hood was up, so something was going on with his truck, so he was like asking people for money. So of course I thought something was wrong, so I gave him money or whatever. I remember a couple weeks later I saw him somewhere else, maybe like a neighborhood Walmart, and same thing. And I remember I called my husband. I was just like, dang, I just saw this guy. He was at Kroger a few weeks ago. He was like, asking for money or whatever. Something was wrong with his car, and he was asking for money and stuff. And now I see him at Walmart doing the same thing. That there's no way that's a coincidence. And he was with his son. His son is like probably like 6 or 7. I was like, there's no way this is a coincidence. So I called my husband. I just told him, and he was just like, bro, I see that dude everywhere doing the same thing. That's what he does. That's his hustle. That's his hustle, is acting like something is wrong with his car. And then he has a son, so obviously he looks vulnerable. So then people are more inclined to help him. That's what he does. That's his hustle. He does that everywhere. And I was like, wow, that was crazy. It was crazy for me to see that. I was like, oh my God, that's wild. And I thought to myself, I could not help but feel sorry for his son, because I pray by the grace of God, his son sees that and thinks, I don't want to be like that. I want to work for my money. I want to be a go-getter. I want to be hardworking, because the same amount of time you're using to trick people into giving you money, you could go get a job. It says in the Bible, there's no food for a lazy man. There's no food for a lazy man. If you're lazy, there's no food for you. There's no food for you. And I thought to myself, I pray that his son is watching that and saying, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be like my dad in that way. I want to be better. you know and I was like, I hope that that generational curse does not pass on to his son, because who's to say that he didn't the dad didn't see his dad do that. You know what I mean? So generational curses, they could plague a whole bloodline if there's not that one person that's there to completely put the hammer, like, if there's not someone that's there to completely put a stop to it. That's what I meant to say. Put a stop to it. Put a hammer. Girl, what were you about to say? Put a hammer where? What was you about to say? I'm like, are you okay? You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's number 4. So, in my bloodline, I had to break that generational curse because my daughter is watching me. Before they went out to dinner, she was watching me do this. She was looking at me do all of this. She was looking at my lights, looking at everything. She was trying to even get in in on the action. She's watching me. My daughter is watching me. And that laziness is not going to plague my bloodline anymore. It ends with my dad. It ends with him. It ends with him, because there is no food for a lazy man. And it's not going to enter my generation. It's not going to enter me and my family and the family that God has created through me. In Jesus' name, amen. Number 5, breaking generational curses with your kids. Ooh, this is a point for those who have children. who's seen some things happen in their life and they don't want to pass that down to their own kids. This is for you. Number 5. I'm going to read straight from my notes. The way to break a generational curse is to do the opposite. The way to break a generational curse is to do the opposite. That is the way to break a generational curse, to do the opposite. So, like for example, like my dad hated me. He hated all of his kids, which is so weird. But I never really understood it. But now as a mom, I really don't understand it. But he hated us. He really didn't, he didn't really fuck with us. And how I know that he hated us is because he would say it, number one, and secondly, what he would say. Because now as a mother, I could never imagine even uttering a fraction of some of the things that he would say to me. But my dad would say things like, he hopes that we never amount to anything. That way, our mother doesn't reap the fruits of her labor. He would say that. He would literally say that. Whether he said it during our birthday, during Christmas, he would say these foul things. He would say all types of stuff. So wild. But anyway, so he would say these things like he hoped we never amount to stuff, blah, blah, blah. Because he had, and because he had a bad childhood, he wanted us to have a bad childhood as well. Because his father would beat him barbarically, he then passed the torch. He would then beat us barbarically too. So it just never made sense to me. So he passed on. He acted on. He allowed the generational curse to continue. Um, as opposed to saying like, I don't have any male children. All I have are females. I should probably be different with them. I should do the opposite of what was done to me. But he was the type of parent that wanted his children to suffer like he did. My mom was the opposite. My mom suffered as a child, but wanted us to have everything she never had. Like, for example, her mom passed away when she was 8 years old. So she was passed around, throughout like her siblings and stuff like that, and like aunts and uncles. She was kind of just like passed around to different homes. And, she was also, passed around, the clothes. She also got like hand me downs too. So she made a vow that when she had children, that she would get them the best of the best, and they would. And that's the reason why she stayed with my dad for as long as she did, because she didn't want to give us a broken home, because she had a broken home. So that's why she endured the abuse she endured, because she didn't want us to go through that. Um, so back to my point, she was passed around, so she didn't want us to be passed around. She was given hand me downs, and she didn't want us to have that. So she would always get us the best of the best. So she gave us the opposite of what she had, which is how I believe a parent is supposed to be. If you endured trauma, the way to break a generational curse is to do the opposite for your children. It's to do the opposite for whoever you are in the pleasure of taking care of, whoever you have the privilege of taking care of, is to do the opposite. But my dad wasn't like that. He endured abuse. He endured all the things he endured, and he wanted us to go through the exact same thing. And he would actually say that. He would actually say those words. He would say that. And I remember just there was just not a lot of love there with my dad. So I always thought to myself, like, I want to be the opposite. No matter what I go through, I never want to fight fire with fire. I never want to be bitter with anybody. I never want to be harsh with anybody. And that's a vow I made to myself from a very, very young age, which is why no matter what happened to me in my life, I always never lost my luster for life. I never lost my zeal for life. You know, I never let what happened to me in my life harden me towards people or even towards myself. Which is why I believe that's really what's carried me throughout my life. And I believe that's why God always blesses me, is because no matter what I go through, I never treat other people with any type of anger or bitterness, because there's just no point in doing that. There's a reason why they're doing that. It's because of who they are. It's not who I am. I'm not that. I'm not like that. So there's no reason for me to behave in that way. That's not my character. And my character doesn't change based on how somebody else treats me. My character is intact because of who I am and whose I am. And I believe that wholeheartedly. So yeah. So my dad wanted us to go through what he went through. And I believe that was a generational curse, that was the first thing I could not wait to break. Before I was even in a position to have kids, I could not wait to be different with my kid. I could not wait to shower my kids with all the love in the world. I could not wait. I couldn't wait to be a mom. I couldn't wait to just like there'll be times when my daughter we have like our bath sessions or whatever, and it's time for bed. I'm giving her foot massages and stuff, like, cause that's my chick, that's my girl. If nobody else does that, it's me. If nobody else treats her that way, it's me. I never understood certain parents that started from ground zero and then want their kids to start from ground zero. That never made sense to me. In my opinion, breaking a generational curse is simply doing the best you can while you have the baton, doing the absolute best you can while you have the baton. And by the time you pass the baton over to the next generation, they're in a much better place than you were when you received the baton. When you stay in the same place when you receive the baton, or even worse, you go backwards, the generational curse continues. I think as and this is just for my generation, the baton that's been passed to you, do the best that you can with it while you have it. If it was given to you at ground zero, take that baton to a level 6 before you pass it on to your kids. That way, when they get the baton, they can take that baton to level 20. And by the time they pass the baton to their children can take that baton to the moon. And I believe that that is how you break a generational curse, is doing the opposite of what was done to you and what was done for you. Um, if you were in a traumatic situation, doing the opposite of that, showing love, pouring out what you wish you would have had, and making sure that your kids and whoever gets the privilege of being in your company, in your space, they get the best of you. If you didn't get the best from your parents, be the best for your kids. I think that's the most important thing. Just because hurt was done to you doesn't mean you have to pass down the hurt. Sometimes God gives you an opportunity to be a parent, to be a sister, to be a relative. That way you can do the opposite of what was done to you. That way you can change the story. That way you can change the circumstance. That way you can treat someone the way you wish you were treated. I believe in my heart that God made me a mom because He knew that I had all the love to give. Even though I wasn't given all the love as a kid, He knew that I had all the love to give, and He knew that my daughter deserved that. He knew that the children that He was going to produce through me, deserved Taiwo, deserved Tai, the mom, the wife, the friend, you know because I don't want to toot my own horn, but I know I'm a good person. But I'm a good person because God lives in me, and God's love is what carries me through my life. So while you have the baton, do the best you can with it. Take that baton to the moon before you pass it off to your kids. And I'm sure the generation that comes after you will be so grateful that you existed to break the generational curse. Okay? Thank you guys so much for listening. I am so grateful for the community that God is building. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Life with Taiwo, the podcast. I will catch you guys in my next one. Bye for now.